Hockey today is a rough sport, but hockey a century ago was a violent battle on the ice where players broke their legs, lost eyes, and had ears torn from their head. Among those players, there was one who was not only an animal on the ice, but one of the greatest players to ever lace up skates, Madam Toastmaster and fellow Sundowners. Eddie Shore was born in 1902, and he began his path to the NHL with the Melville Millionaires, and he led them to a senior championship. During that championship game against Winnipeg, the Winnipeg team did everything they could to take him out of commission. And by the end of the game, he had lost 6 teeth, broken his nose, and broken his jaw, but he won the championship. He then moved on to the Edmonton Eskimos, which were a hockey team at the time. And with them, he began to play defense and earn the nickname of the Edmonton Express. During a playoff game, Shore suffered a cut on his leg from a skate, resulting in 14 stitches. One of his teammates joked that he was faking the injury. So Shore played the entire game, even as the stitches opened up, and he bled on the ice everywhere he skated. When that league folded at the end of the season, he moved on to the NHL and started playing for the Boston Bruins. In his first season, he had 18 points in 41 games. He also led the league in penalty minutes with 136. After that season, 2 players, Bill Coutu and Sprague Cleghorn, joined the Boston Bruins, and the brash Eddie Shore strutted up and down the ice in front of those 2 players. They were veterans, and they didn't like the rookie doing that. Coutu decided that he was going to body slam Shore on the ice, his teammate, headbutt him, and give him an elbow. But Shore was not to be trifled with. When Coutu rushed Shore, Shore held his ground and knocked Coutu onto the ice. Coutu was out of commission for a week. As for Eddie Shore, his ear was nearly torn from his head. It only hung there by a few pieces of skin. Every doctor that Shore went to said, "We have to amputate the ear," and he said no. When he did finally find a doctor who would reattach the ear, he refused anesthetic, watched the doctor reattach the ear with a mirror just to make sure he did a good job. At the end of that season, he set a then record 165 penalty minutes. In another game with the Montreal Maroons, the Maroons players attacked him so much that by the end of the game, he had a broken nose, 2 black eyes, a 2-inch gash above his left eye, 3 broken teeth, and a gashed cheekbone. Then there was his legendary journey just to get to a hockey game on January 3rd, 1929. He had missed the train because he was delayed in traffic. He couldn't catch a flight, and he couldn't catch another train because of a snowstorm. So he hired a limo and a chauffeur to drive him from Boston to Montreal. The chauffeur drove through the night until he slid into a ditch. At that point, Eddie Shore got behind the wheel and started to drive the limo himself. Eventually, the windshield wiper froze to the windshield. So Eddie Shore took the windshield off the limousine and kept driving. The car went into the ditch 4 times by the time they reached the Canadian border. At 3 p.m. the next day, it once again went into the ditch, so Eddie Shore walked to a farmhouse, bought an entire team of horses, and had them pull his limo, or the limo of his chauffeur, out of the ditch. He arrived in Montreal 17 hours after he had left Boston. He ate a steak, took a nap, and scored the winning goal for the team that day. That year, he also led the Boston Bruins to their first Stanley Cup. On December 12th, 1933, Shore hit Toronto's Ace Bailey in a collision on the ice, and Ace Bailey flew through the air and smacked his head on the ice, and he went into convulsions. Bailey was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, and they didn't know if he was going to die. If he had have died, Shore would have been charged with manslaughter. But Bailey did pull through, even though he was in a coma for 10 days. Shore actually felt horrible about this, and he apologized to Bailey, and Bailey said, "Don't worry about it. It was an accident. It's all part of the game." But on February 14th, 1934, a benefit game was held for Bailey and his family, and at center ice, Shore shook his hand and gave him a hug. In 1939, Shore won his second Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins, and then the following season played for the New York Americans when he retired. In his NHL career, Shore won the Hart Trophy 4 times from 1933 to 1938. The only 2 players who have more Hart Trophies are Wayne Gretzky and Gordie Howe. In 1947, his number 2 was retired by the Boston Bruins, which was the same year he was actually inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Now, after his NHL career finished, he bought the Springfield Indians, and under his ownership, they made the playoffs 12 different times and won 3 Calder Cups in a row. Did I mention that Eddie Shore also created the Ice Capades? Because he did. On March 15, 1985, Eddie Shore died of liver cancer. In 1998, he was ranked the 10th greatest hockey player of all time. Now, he was a violent player who left everything on the ice, including parts of his body. But he cemented his legacy as one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Adam Toastmaster.